Hello, Brad here with another amazing story, this time about a near-death experience which happened to Howard Storm. This is a condensed version of his story, so I included links in the description to his own narrated full unedited story, along with links to Howard's book and website. If you liked this content, be sure and like the video and subscribe to this channel. Thanks. Okay, this is Howard's life-changing story. I hope no one has to go through what I went through. I've never told anyone what really happened and what it was like for me. It was really bad, really bad, but it was also an incredible gift of love that God gave me to go through. So let me begin. My faith was materialism. I was a 38-year-old genius college professor and department head. What all my PhD friends and I believe is if you can't measure it, see it, weigh it, or count it, it simply doesn't exist. So here I lay, dying in a hospital. Praying was the last thing in the world I would do. It was ridiculous even thinking about it. Hours earlier, when I went to the emergency room for some tests, it turned out I had a hole in my duodenum that was leaking hydrochloric acid and other digestive juices into my abdomen, which were literally dissolving my internal organs. The two doctors who saw me just sent me over to surgery and said I had an hour to live. What they didn't know was there were no surgeons available to perform the surgery. So there I waited. No surgery and no meds to ease the unbearable pain. I also had a lot of trouble breathing. For the last several hours, I was totally focused on trying to breathe and knew that if I stopped trying, I would quickly go unconscious and die. The nurse came in eventually and said they were unable to locate a doctor. So I said, that's it. I told my wife to tell my parents that I loved them, and I said my goodbyes. She sat down crying, and I told her it was time for me to go, and I simply stopped trying to breathe, and I was gone. In reality, I found that dying was the easiest thing in the world to do. The next thing that happened is I woke up and stood up. Strangely, I felt more real physically than I'd ever felt in my entire life. I was also completely healed from my health crisis, so thought the operation must have been a success. So, I tried to communicate with my wife, who had her head buried in her hands with tears running down her cheeks, but I got no response, which made me very upset. I tried talking to this older fellow who was laying in the bed near mine, but he just looked through me and said nothing. I tried yelling and screaming at him, but got no response. Now I became very agitated. Then I heard some people outside the room calling me by name. Howard, come with us. I went over to the doorway of the room, and there were people out in the hallway, which was a drabby gray, like a poor black and white TV picture, very fuzzy. I thought this was weird because in contrast, my room was so ultra clear and colorful. These people said, come. I asked, are you from the doctor? They said, we know about you. We've been waiting for you. Hurry up and come with us. After some thought, I decided to follow them. We went on a journey, and I ended up in what I believe was hell. Hell is a separation from God. In this separation, it means there are none of the good things that God gives us, like birds, butterflies, flowers, sunshine, rain, and wind. There's no candy, no chocolate cake, no ice cream. It's only dark and bleak. What psychologists have found when they keep a bunch of animals together in a cage for a period of time is they start gnawing on each other because that's the only gratification they can get. Additionally, in prison movies like Shawshank Redemption, there's the concept of the new fish. When a new inmate comes into the prison, everyone's excited because they want to initiate him, which usually means brutal rape and other unspeakable things. So I was a new fish in hell. For what seemed hours upon hours, hundreds of them had their way with me. The physical part was awful, but the emotional trauma was far worse. While they were doing these horrible things to me, I thought, how could they want to hurt me that much, and why do they hate me that much? I just couldn't understand then, but then I realized it's because they don't care. I was just a new fish. They finally stopped when I was no longer responsive. I was too far gone to react physically or emotionally. I was literally roadkill. When the crowd lost interest in me, I heard a voice say, pray to God. I don't know who said that or where it came from. I thought, what a stupid idea. I don't believe in God. I don't pray. The voice said again, "Pray to God." And I thought, I don't know how to pray. I haven't prayed since I was a kid. I don't pray. Forget it. The voice said yet again, very strong this time, "Pray to God." So I thought, what would it look like for me to pray? So I thought, okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Oh, no, no, no. 7 years ago, our forefathers brought forth on this continent. No, 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 no. I was reciting things I memorized from the perspective of a college professor. I thought prayer is something you memorize when you were a child. So I tried to remember and finally came up with, "The Lord is my shepherd," which I murmured. As soon as I said that, the people that were still around me had become very angry. They said to me in the most disgusting language I've ever heard, "There is no God. Nobody can hear you, and now we're going to rip you apart." They couldn't stand to hear my miserable, pathetic little prayer. Then some other prayers started coming to mind, like, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name," which I started saying out loud. This made them go completely crazy with anger. All this time I had been defenseless. No matter how hard I had fought to fend them off of me before, I finally found something they really didn't like. I also noticed the more I said these phrases, which I ended up shouting at them, the more it drove them away. It was almost pitch black and I couldn't see much of anything, but I could hear them retreating further and further away. Eventually I realized the only thing I could hear anymore was myself, so I became quiet and listened carefully. I knew they were out there somewhere, but they were far away, which was good. I thought about my situation and realized I'm stuck because I couldn't crawl or even move anywhere. I didn't even know where I was. I didn't have to debate this in my mind anymore. I knew that I was not alive, nor was I in the world as I knew it before. Laying there in contemplation, I knew that my life was complete garbage and I had been a selfish ass, which I would have never admitted to you while in the world. If you would have met me as a professor at the university, I would have gotten you to admire me and be my fan. All you would have been to me is someone to support my ego. So at this time, I did my own life review and graded how I treated people. What I concluded is that my relationship with my parents, my students, my friends, my wife, my kids, everyone was all F's and D's up and down the line, because I could see all the ways I failed and I felt extremely bad. I realized that I really belonged in this place, and I was now stuck here. Nothing was ever going to change my circumstance. I thought the only way I was going to have any kind of existence in this place was to somehow pull myself together and become more vicious than they were. In other words, before they got a chance to bite me on the neck, I would rip their head off. And then I thought, I'd rather not exist like that. I don't want to be like one of them. So now I was in a dilemma, because here I am and there's no way out. They're going to come back, and I can't count on this prayer to save me every time. Besides, I wasn't speaking the prayer from my heart, but rather from a tense anger. How long was that going to work for me? I went into the deepest despair. Here I was sinking deeper and deeper in an emotional and spiritual cesspool. My mind was revolving over and over, trying to come up with some solution, and all I could think of was an 8 or 9-year-old sitting in Sunday school singing, "Jesus Loves Me." I remembered that when I was a little kid, I believed God was like Superman. As a young child, I lay in bed and imaginary monsters under my bed started snapping at my feet. I would pray to Jesus and they would go away. Now other voices in my head told me, "You don't believe this silly stuff. You were a child, an idiot. You know it's not true." And still other voices in my head were saying, "Why would God care about you? You've done nothing but use His name as a cuss word for the past 20 years. You know He's not going to listen to you. And even if He did exist, He hates your guts." This barrage of thoughts were screaming around my head until finally I said, "Stop it, stop it." And I yelled in the darkness out of pure desperation, "Jesus, save me." Without the faintest idea whether there was a Jesus or not, or whether He liked me or not, I had nothing except this faint hope that it might be true. Suddenly, this impossibly bright light came shining down from above me. But as it shone on me, I looked at myself and saw that I had literally been torn apart. That's why I couldn't move. As I lay there, out of this light, I saw a pair of hands and arms reach out and touch me. When He touched me, 3 things happened. 1, All of the gore just started to disappear and I became whole. The other thing happened is, instead of feeling nothing but pain from head to toe, now all the pain was gone and I was filled with ecstasy. And lastly, and most importantly, I experienced a love that I have never known existed. And unfortunately, I have not found any way as of yet to even begin to describe it. He picked me up and held me real tight. As he did this, besides the healing and love I felt, I knew that he really liked me a lot. As a matter of fact, I felt like I was his favorite person in the whole universe. He wasn't mad at me, he was happy to see me. As I was holding on to Jesus and crying out of happiness, he gave me a nice, very soft, tender back rub. Then we took off. It was just like flying in a helicopter, except it was only Jesus and me. As we were traveling along, I looked up and saw we were moving towards a world of light, and all around this world were millions of other lights going and coming. There was lots of activity happening. Suddenly, I had this gigantic, the God that I said didn't exist? We're going to his house. I just knew that somewhere in that huge galaxy of light, there was God and we're heading towards him. I thought I'm the biggest idiot and they probably hate me because of what I have said and done all my life. I thought to myself, he's made a terrible mistake. I don't belong here. And with that thought, suddenly we came to a stop outside the world of light, which we can call heaven because that's what I believe it was. He spoke to me for the first time telepathically and said, "We don't make mistakes. You belong here." And I thought, how do you know what I thought? I didn't say that. Can you hear what I think? And he laughed and said, "I know everything you've ever thought." So we talked for a while, and then he interrupted our conversation saying, "I have some people I want you to meet." So he called out with a musical tone, and a group of angels came forming a semicircle around us, and he said, "They have recorded your life and they want to show it to you." We proceeded to watch my life, which was like a holographic projection of me interacting with people. The interesting thing is that there were props like chairs on the floor, but usually not a background unless it was appropriate. We go into a scene and see what happened to the person after we had interacted. We would feel what they were feeling. I realized I was more manipulative and detached from people than I had imagined. Jesus and the angels clearly shared their unhappiness with the direction that I was going, not in a cruel way, but just showing disappointment. I felt bad that I was such a disappointment. What I ultimately learned from the whole session was that we were created to love one another. That's our job, that's the curriculum. That's the only thing that matters in our lives, and what I was doing was moving away from that. I had a career, I had a wife, I had kids, I had a house, cars, I got tenure, and I was a full professor. I had the American dream, and I was going somewhere. None of that mattered, and they let me know that none of that mattered at all. I would point out things like, "Look here, I'm a professor at 26 years old." And they said, "That is of no consequence at all. Look here where you ignored a student who really needed a friend." As the life review went on into my adult life, I was begging them to stop, but they said I had to watch it. So we went through the whole review, and it was brutal. I made them very disappointed and very sad, but I got the point. It was very simple. While we are on earth, we are supposed to love each other, and I completely missed it. I thought my life was about being the most famous, wealthiest, important, powerful person that I could possibly be. I mean, I wanted it all. When we were finished, Jesus asked, "Do you have any questions?" And I said, "Yes, I have a million questions." So I asked him everything I could think of, and he answered everything. I've never told anybody everything because some of this gets a little esoteric. Telling people some of what I did has had some people accusing me of being the devil or an apostasy. A lot of people don't like what I was told in heaven. For example, when babies are either aborted, stillborn, or when a child dies at a young age, they just get another chance at life. People have been furious with me and call me all kinds of names because Jesus told me that. I tell them, "I'm sorry you don't like Jesus' plan." He not only told me many things, but we visited some places in the universe that are full of intelligent beings of varied life forms. In fact, our world is one of the lowest of them in terms of spiritual progress. There are many more spiritual, kind, good, loving, and intelligent beings all over the universe. I asked Jesus, "What happens to people when they die?" He said, "It's a big problem because usually people die and they don't know it. When they were alive, they were suffering, but when they die, the suffering is over. They feel great and think they've gotten well, so don't know they died at all. After I ran out of things to ask, I said, I want to go to heaven now. He said, actually, you need to go back to the world and try to live the life that you were created to live in the first place. I argued with him to stay in heaven as much as I possibly could. I asked, why would you send me back to the world? It's full of cruel, mean people, and it's just a terrible existence down there. He said, that's true. There's lots of cruel, mean people, but there's also a lot of loving, beautiful people. Whatever is in your heart is what you will find. If you have love and beauty in your heart, you will find love and beauty in others. If you seek cruelty and ugliness, you will find cruelty and ugliness. I have found in the 33 years since this experience that there is love and beauty everywhere and in everyone, including the people that did not strike you immediately as being loving or beautiful. So I woke up having returned to my body, had the operation, and I eventually recovered. In conclusion, I want to add that it's so easy to call to God and have your life totally changed. You can go from deep despair to joy, from pain to bliss. All your problems aren't going to be solved immediately, but with the help of God, you will find the solutions to your problems. You will find a way through all the difficulties in life. There are real churches, real synagogues, real temples where you will find loving and kind people ready to help and support you. It's all free, with no cost or obligation. I hope this story was inspiring and made your day a little brighter. If you like this content, please consider subscribing, commenting, and liking this video. Doing so will help get these stories recommended to more people on YouTube. Thank you.